Hello students, the chapter that we are going to do through this video lecture is called It's Question Time by J.V. Narlikar. J.V. Narlikar was an astrophysicist and a Nobel laureate, and he was also an avid scholar, and he gave a number of lectures and speeches in different schools because apart from being a scientist he also wanted to have interaction with children, school children and children who were in their growing ages, because he wanted that these children should get a kick out of science, a curiosity of what is science, scientific environment around them. And this chapter, basically, as the title also suggests, this chapter talks about how science is important and how scientific curiosity is important, because he wants children to ask questions. Until and unless we ask questions and we are curious about knowing things, we will never be able to improve our knowledge. So moving on with the chapter, as you can see here in this slide, the whole text of the chapter is given and I'm going to read and let us try to understand. Nalika says, curiosity killed the cat. But what killed curiosity? The answer is cat. And here, as you can see, cat is written in these numerics, and it is the full form is conformism and teaching. CAT. Conformism and teaching. Teaching, we all know what teaching is. But what is conformism? Now, conformism means to follow a fixed path. This means that you will never try to find a new path. What people have been walking on, where people have been going, you also just follow them, and there is nothing new. So he says curiosity has been killed by both of these things. First, people just tell you, elders tell you, teachers tell you, parents tell you to follow a fixed path, and then they teach you and teach you and teach you, and that teaching is only rote learning. Rote learning in Hindi is called ratta. So students are just they are expected to rote learn and not understand, and that is the reason why curiosity is killed. I am talking of curiosity in the context of school education. So now Narlikar here says that he is talking of school education. School education means when children are young, when they are in their growing stage, because this is the stage which is most important for the process of learning new things. So you can only learn new things when you are young. That is the best stage. And then he says, he gives us an example. Now this is a very good example, if you can just try to read and remember it, because this example will also be important in your answers. And he says, in his autobiography, the famous astrophysicist Fred Hoyle. Now, Fred Hoyle was also his guide in PhD. J.V. Narlikar, who is writing this essay, or maybe it is just one of out of his autobiography. His PhD guide was Fred Hoyle. So, from his PhD guide's childhood experience, he is telling us an episode. So what happened with Fred Hoyle? In his autobiography, the famous astrophysicist Fred Hoyle recounts an episode from his primary school days. His school teacher had told the class that a certain type of flower had 5 petals. Young Fred was curious and wanted to check the facts by looking for these flowers. While most did have 5 petals, he came across one that had 6 petals. अब ये एक बड़ी problem है. If you are told that this flower has 5 petals and you find a flower which has 4 petals, at least the teacher can say that one petal has fallen off. But if you find a flower which has 6 petals, then how would you be able to explain an extra petal? So this was a big question. So what did Fred do? He took that flower and took it to his teacher. He brought it to the attention of the teacher. Had there been only 4 petals, one could explain the fact by arguing that one had fallen off. But how do you explain an extra petal? Was the rule of 5 petals wrong after all, he asked. The teacher was not used to being so questioned and responded by boxing the boy's ears. So what did the teacher do? Did the teacher help the child? Did the teacher explain to the child No, the teacher did nothing. What did he do? He violently boxed the child's ears. Now, Fred was very upset because his question was very genuine. There was nothing wrong with his question. So, Fred, however, did not take it lying down. He did not become quiet. What would any child do? Either he would become quiet and he would think, I will never ask a question again. But Fred did not do that. This is not the way of answering a legitimate question, he argued, and managed to convince his mother that she should change his school. So at least the mother changed the school of the boy because he was not happy with the teacher's behavior. Here, what is the teacher doing by violently boxing the child's ears? The teacher is just taking the curiosity away from the child. ऐसा बच्चा कभी दोबारा टीचर के पास सवाल नहीं लेकर जाएगा जो टीचर उसे मारे या फिर उसे डांटे या उसे एक्सप्लेन ना करे. तो टीचर्स काफी हद तक रिस्पॉन्सिबल हो जाते हैं if they behave badly with their students and do not answer their questions. So this is a good example of how curiosity is killed. Moving on. Now, autographed answer. Now, this experience is from his own life. अभी तक उन्होंने जो एक्सपीरियंस बताया था it was from the life of Fred Hoyle, but this experience that he is telling is from his own life, and there are a number of questions that can come from this experience also. So I hope you will just understand this properly. So far as putting a lid on a child's curiosity is concerned, Indian schools have been no different. Children are encouraged to memorize the text as well as answer to questions raised within. So what do we do in Indian schools? We ask the children to memorize the text. Memorize means to learn, just rote learn, याद कर लो text. और उसके बाद क्वेश्चन आंसर भी याद कर लो. You don't have to understand. It is just those questions which the teacher has dictated in class that students are supposed to memorize those answers to questions regardless of whether they are understood the subject matter or not. So now the student might not have understood anything, but he can get good marks by just learning the question answers. Their schools hardly provide suitable outlets to the spontaneous questions in case they didn't. So there are certain spontaneous questions. Spontaneous means on the spot. So if you are reading a text and there are some questions that come to your mind, you want to ask them. Otherwise, the understanding will be either zero or it will be incomplete. But then, do teachers answer questions? That is a big question. This fact was driven home to me in the following way. Now he is telling us a story of his own life. For years, I had been operating a scheme of encouraging students to ask questions. At the end of a public lecture means sometimes he gave lectures in schools. So he gave those lectures and there was a large audience, and mostly the audience was school children only. Okay, because his lectures were for school children. They would be the inevitable autograph seekers. Autograph seekers means those who want your autograph. So Narlikar says that whenever I went for a public lecture, many students came to me for autographs. But did Narlikar give autographs to them? No. Rather than give my autograph then and there, I would announce that one could get my autograph by sending a postcard with a question relating to what I had talked about, and that my answer would carry my signature. So this was a very unique way of giving the autograph. He would tell the children that go home, if you have understood my lecture, ask me any question and mail that question to me, and I will answer that question and I will sign it. So that will automatically be an autograph. एंड एट द सेम टाइम खाली ऑटोग्राफ नहीं मिलेगा, किसी सवाल का जवाब मिलेगा, सवाल पूछने की इच्छा जागेगी. दिस वॉज हिज मेन कंसर्न. वाई डिड ही गिव दोज लेक्चर्स? ही वॉज अ फेमस एस्ट्रोफिजिसिस्ट. वो चाहते तो अपनी लैब में अपना बड़ा काम कर सकते थे, पर वो स्कूल के बच्चों के पास क्यों जाते थे लेक्चर देने? बिकॉज ही वॉन्टेड देम टू हैव द क्यूरियोसिटी टू आस्क क्वेश्चंस. So this was a good system. The system worked reasonably well for a while and was based on the premise that of those who rush in for autograph of the speaker, usually only a small fraction are serious about the subject. So only those would filter through this scheme and take the trouble to write. I was only too happy to spend time replying to their questions as they represented a spontaneous outlet to human curiosity. अब ये जो स्कीम थी कुछ देर तो बहुत अच्छी चली, एंड नार्लिकर ऑल्सो टुक आउट टाइम टू आंसर द क्वेश्चंस ऑफ चिल्ड्रन. One NGO in Mumbai subsequently published a booklet. इस पे आपको short question आता है. Please note that an NGO published a booklet of these question answers in Marathi. Which language? Marathi language, under the title Science Through Postcards. But then what happened? Now the big question is, what happened? What happened to the scheme that Narlikar was carrying out? So let us read. However, we Indians are good at misusing well-intentioned programs. My intention was to encourage spontaneity in asking questions. Some school teachers began to dictate questions to their class. Now what happened? School teachers started to dictate questions to their class. तो वो स्कीम तो फ्लॉप हो गई क्योंकि बच्चे खुद क्वेश्चन नहीं पूछ रहे थे, टीचर्स उनको क्वेश्चंस डिक्टेट कर रहे थे. So the whole system was spoiled by these school teachers. Okay, so he says, school teachers began to dictate questions to their class which were to be sent to me by the students. Thus, one week I would receive 50 postcards with identically phrased questions preceded by identically phrased requests for my autographed answer. तो नार्लिकर के पास 50 postcard एक साथ आने लगे with same questions. So it was very clear that the children are not asking these questions. It is the teachers who are dictating the questions. All from the same class of the same school. Then there were instances of students sending in routine textbook questions. So now students started asking him textbook questions which the teachers should answer, but now the students are asking Narlikar to answer those questions for them. Now this is also strange that teachers are not answering the questions, so they are telling the children, go ask Dr. Narlikar. Since Dr. Narlikar is answering these questions, you better ask him rather than me. Reluctantly, therefore, I have now stopped the scheme. So this is very unfortunate. उन्हें भी बड़ा दुख है, बड़े दुख के साथ he stopped the scheme. Moving on. Our school syllabi, teaching methods and examinations are, with a few exceptions, based on encouraging conformism and rote learning. So now if you can see on your page, I have marked 1, 2, 3 and 4. And this is the reason, because this question usually comes in the exam, so you can answer in these points. Okay, so he says, the school syllabus is designed for rote learning. Indian school syllabus में रट्टा मारने की ही वो चलती है, एक प्रोसीजर चलता है और बच्चों को खुद नहीं पता होता कि क्या करना है, बच्चे सिर्फ रट्टा मारते हैं. And there are reasons. What are the reasons that children are rote learning? Why are they not asking spontaneous questions? उसके 4 reason है, and you must remember these reasons for your answers also. That why are the children just discouraged to ask questions? And the first reason is the teacher does not have the confidence to answer the question. Teacher does not know how to answer the question. Second, the questions, although good, may be irrelevant. Sometimes teacher would say, बैठ जाओ, ये कोई इस chapter से related है ही नहीं, क्यों पूछ रहे हो तुम? So the teachers tell the children that these questions are irrelevant. So that also becomes one reason. Or the class is too big for the teacher to be able to establish a one-to-one rapport with each and every pupil. Now this is a big problem. You might also have faced the same problem in your school, that the classes are so big, there are 60, 70, 50 students, and how can the teacher answer questions of all these students? It's a big problem. And of course, last point, there is shortage of time for questions as the syllabus is crammed with too much matter. Syllabus khatam hi nahi hota. There is so much to teach. How can you just start answering questions? So these are the reasons why children are discouraged from asking many questions. Okay, let us move on. Look at this. Curiosity amiss. This is the big problem that he finds in our education system, and the big problem is that curiosity is missing. Whatever the reason, curiosity takes a back seat well behind memorization of the subject matter. Memorization यानी याद करना. Children are just making an effort to rote learn. They are not making an effort to understand. We may proudly assert that this is the way our ancestors acquired knowledge, which was orally learned, memorized, and then passed on to the next generation. This is the way the Vedas were handed down from generation to generation. It also tells why we do not have the wealth of written knowledge of ancient origin as in the West or in China. He says ऐसा हमारे पुराने जमाने में भी होता रहा है. For learning, in the earlier stages when there was Guru Shishya Parampara, at that time also learning was oral learning. Children used to understand and learn and then pass on to other students. So there was no writing. So he says this has quite happened. Rote learning, however, now this is an important question. Rote learning, what are the disadvantages of rote learning? This type of question may come. What is the problem with rote learning? So this is the answer. It freezes the knowledge base in its tracks. There is no evolution, no addition. If you are rote learning, then you are not adding anything to your bank of knowledge. It discourages creativity and originality. तो अगर ये इसका पहला point है, it freezes knowledge in its tracks, there is no evolution, then this is the second point, that it discourages creativity and originality. I recall an incident when I was in the 10th standard. I had found on my own a new and short proof of Pythagoras theorem. अब मैथ्स की Pythagoras theorem का उन्होंने खुद ही एक proof निकाल लिया. किन्होंने? डॉक्टर नार्लिकर ने. I gave that proof in the half yearly exam. My class teacher called me to say that although the proof was a good one and he was giving full marks for it, he wished to caution me against giving it in the board exam. So the teacher tells him, proof तो तुम्हारा ठीक है, board के exam में मत लिख देना. Why? Because he would get a 0. Because anything which is not given in the book, even though it may be correct, it will be given a big 0. If the examiner sees an unfamiliar diagram, he will give you 0 for it without bothering to read the proof. The reason, he has very little time to look at the answer books. Examiner भी क्या करे, उसे इतने पेपर चेक करने हैं that he does not have much time to read everything. And the third, time crunch. Time crunch means there is lack of time, shortage of time. So he says time crunch is often held as the prime culprit. It is the main reason why syllabi overloaded with subject matter harass teacher addressing huge classes and many outside interruptions like buns and holidays. Who has time to answer pupils' questions or to encourage a new line of thinking? Teachers don't have any time. There is so much to do and so little time. It will take a long time for our lawmakers to get their priorities right and encourage more schools, smaller classes and syllabi that emphasize comprehension rather than excess of information. So Narlikar says lawmakers ये इतनी जल्दी नहीं कर सकते. ना वो सिलेबस कम करेंगे, ना वो स्कूल्स बढ़ाएंगे, ना वो क्लासेस छोटी करेंगे, तो फिर हम क्या करें? There must be some solution. And here is the solution. And this is also very important. Search and find. Now that pupils, the students have to take things in their own hand. आपको खुद ही करना है. Nevertheless, given the fact that teachers will have no time in the foreseeable future, can we encourage students to be more self-reliant? Self-reliant means self-dependent. क्या आप अपने आप पे डिपेंड कर सकते हैं instead of depending on the teachers? Can they find answers to their questions themselves? Just as finding a hidden person in a hide and seek game brings pleasure, so can searching and finding the answer to your question. If the school has अब बच्चे ढूंढेंगे कैसे? In today's times you would say we can find from the internet, we can Google it. But at that time when there was no Google, there were libraries. So the school has databases like encyclopedia, who's and books, especially written with answers to frequently asked questions. Students may browse and locate the answers themselves. तो पहला solution क्या है कि बच्चे बुक्स में से अपने आंसर खुद ढूंढें. और सेकंड क्या है? इंटरनेट. विद द इंटरनेट ग्रोइंग इन इट्स कवरेज एंड एक्सेस टू इट बिकमिंग चीपर, द नेटवर्क्ड पीसी कैन बी एन इनवैल्यूएबल टूल इन दिस क्वेस्ट. Even with 6 decades behind me, I experience a childlike thrill whenever my search leads to a website with the much sought for information. He says it is a thrill. ये एक बहुत ज्यादा एक्साइटमेंट है व्हेन यू कैन फाइंड आंसर्स फॉर योरसेल्फ। कोई हमें बताए उसमें तो ठीक है, मजा आता है, पर अगर हम खुद अपने आंसर ढूंढें तो उसमें बहुत मजा आता है। सो स्टूडेंट्स मस्ट try to find answers for themselves. But this will work provided the school authorities create a time slot for such a search and find exercise. At least एक पीरियड होना चाहिए जिसमें बच्चे खुद जाए, लाइब्रेरी जाए, कंप्यूटर रूम जाए, अपने सवालों के जवाब ढूंढ सके। जस्ट एज दे क्रिएट अ टाइम slot for games and PT. During this period, the students are let loose in the library and information center of the school to find for themselves the answer to their questions. For they do still have questions despite our education system. अच्छी बात यह है कि बच्चों के पास सवाल हमेशा ही रहेंगे, क्यूरियोसिटी हमेशा रहेगी, बस हमने मारनी नहीं है। This is the theme of this chapter, that we must not kill children's curiosity. As I have found, whenever I engage them in question answer log, I have learned a lot myself by doing so. Question answer log means children ask questions and answer questions, ask questions and answer questions. So in this way, they learn a lot of things. So this is the end of the chapter. I hope you have enjoyed it. Thank you very much.